This is a really wonderful evening, and as I look around the room, I see members of many synagogues and Jewish community organizations, and I thank Howard Gillman for bringing us together tonight, as we know he'll bring the UCI campus together. Howard spoke here about half a year ago when he was first appointed acting chancellor. Everybody was so taken with him. His personal qualities, his intelligence, his administrative skills, and we dared to dream. We really hoped that the acting chancellor, maybe he could become the chancellor. And then there was a community meeting for leaders from various organizations that Janet Napolitano called. And at that meeting, it was clear that there were so many of us who had met the acting chancellor, and we said, well, this is the kind of person who we would like to see as chancellor. But still you wait and you wait throughout that long summer, and then the announcement came, and it really is a dream come true. Howard Gillman's skills, honed UCLA, and where he got his education, USC, where he served as professor and in administrative capacities, really mean that we are the beneficiaries of that educational and administrative journey. We know how fortunate we are. We know how Chancellor Gillman will pull the community and the campus together, and even more importantly, the campus itself together. It's my great honor to introduce Jeff Margolis, who will introduce our speaker tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi Rocklis. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Anyone hungry? I'll be back to that in a moment. Rabbi Rocklis and Sari Schreiber, president of university, thank you for having us tonight. It's appropriate that we're here at University Synagogue, where you often have luminaries and inspirational speakers, which is why I won't talk too long. But this is a place that is known for scholarly dialogue, and of course we have a great scholar and leader with us tonight. And I'd also like to thank the staff at university who helped, of course, with the logistics and putting this all together. Tonight's a partnership of local, regional, and national organizations. We're very grateful to Jewish Federation Family Services, our outstanding campus organizations, including Hillel Foundation of Orange County, Chabad of UC Irvine, AE Pi Fraternity, the Anti-Defamation League, and the American Jewish Committee. I'd like to take a brief moment to acknowledge my co-chair of the Rose Council, Dr. Jim Weiss. He's a doctor, a real doctor, a medical doctor, a fully formed Jewish fetus. And we also have a UCI Foundation trustee and another of the member of the Rose Council, Doug Freeman, with us tonight. From Jewish Federation and Family Services, we have the chair, Debbie how do you pronounce that? Margolis, my lovely wife, and President and CEO, Shalom Elka. We have the director of the Rose Project, Lisa Armani, and the leader of JCLI, which I'll explain in a minute, the Jewish Campus Leadership Initiative, Judith Flack. From ADL, we have our regional director, who I got to spend some time with just a little bit earlier today, Melissa Carr, and also Mike Rubin, the chair. From Hillel Foundation of Orange County, we have the president and interim director, and he's also a member of the Rose Council, Dr. Eugene Spiritus, who's got some really awesome socks that you got to check out tonight if you haven't seen those. And of course, I need to thank Chancellor Gillman for giving the Orange County Jewish community a glimpse into, I guess, what FDR popularized as the first 100 days. Even though you're not through those yet, we're excited to hear about your vision and what you're laying out for the future, what your aspirations are, what your vision is. That's 100 days, but what about the last 3,600 days or so? We've had an interesting decade or so on the UCI campus, to say the least. And what I can say is, while things can sometimes get emotional, we, the leadership of the Rose Council, determined that the only sustainable path was to develop a transparent and trustful relationship with campus administration. Most of you know we recently bid adieu to Michael Drake, who entered the scene at a very difficult time and both built and broadened UCI's relationship with the OC Jewish community and with Israel. I get lucky. Sometimes I feel like Forrest Gump because of my involvement in certain community things. I got to meet Howard and his lovely wife, Dr. Ellen Ruskin Gillman, very early when they entered the community, host them for a Shabbat dinner, learn a little bit about them, and they are just delightful, down-to-earth people, as you will see for yourself if you haven't had a chance to meet Howard yet. I've got to spend the last 6 years being a part of an exceptional group of leaders in the community concerned about our community, different stakeholders of different types. We've had a chance to survey the community and understand issues of importance in the Jewish community. I did want to share with you an important update because we all know how difficult fundraising is for capital projects at synagogues and so forth, but we put out a prospectus to turn the bowling alley across the street into a Jewish delicatessen, and we've raised over $100 million. I'm sorry, Shalom, I took your thunder on that one, but I wanted to share that with all of you in the community. You know, the power of pastrami is the power to heal, and we are working on the climate at not only at UCI but at Chapman and at Fullerton. We have together as a community begun to move UCI in a transformation from a school that was always the highlight reel of anti-Semitism, and we see how the press gets a hold of things today, right? And just keeps running it through the spin cycle. And today, UCI is an organization and an entity and a place that is an example of how to create a model to deal with activities on campus that's respectful and positive and safe, and recognizes that while people have differences, there's more constructive ways to solve that than some of the ways that we've seen in the past. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn your attention to this screen for a short video that will talk to you a little bit about the progress we've made at UCI.
The hard days on campus, they were trying. When there's hate week going on, you have the big wall full of misinformation. Students come up and they ask you, say, "You're Jewish. How do you hold yourself accountable for this?" There were times on campus when I felt that my Jewish identity was being attacked.
Delegitimization is a global strategy whose aim is to bring down the state of Israel and create an environment such that Israel does not have the right to exist.
Our approach was to work with the administrators to understand how they viewed the challenges and how we could build positive programming together that was constructive, dealt with difficult dialogues, and built bridges.
One of the strategies of the Rose Project was to help build strong Jewish organizations on campus and also to help build Jewish leaders who really have strong Jewish identity and understand Israel advocacy.
Henry and I believe in the Rose Project. We're helping students combat with education the problems with anti-Israeli feelings on all three campuses, Fullerton, Chapman, and UCI.
Thanks to the Rose Project, I've been able to go to the APAC Policy Conference. I was able to implement it into our Hillel programs, presenting Israel in a different context than what our students think about it.
Perhaps the best change that has occurred, the one that will have the greatest long-term impact, is the awareness and sensitivity of the issue by the administration.
It made sense to develop academic ties between the University of California, Irvine, for example, and a number of Israeli universities.
We have had 2 medical students from UCI visit Ben Gurion University. We are now bringing medical students from Ben Gurion University to UCI.
I think UCI and Tel Aviv University in particular, but also the Israeli universities in general, make good partners because we have a community here that will be supportive of that partnership.
Thanks to the Rose Project, there's a group of students on campus who are very well trained when it comes to Israel advocacy. And because of this, the students are able to come together and create programs that help educate the campus about what really happens in Israel.
When I think back about my college experience, it's going to be how I found my Jewish identity at UCI.
When we think about what changes have occurred on campus, we are seeing a more civil climate than we saw in the past. And I've seen the number of constructive dialogues and programs put forth by the administrators on campus, the level of community programming, the level of programs that enhance Jewish life and enhance educational learning for Jewish student leaders. Those have all risen dramatically since the inception of the Rose Project. I look so serious. Actually, it's pretty serious stuff though, isn't it? So let's move along here. I do want to make sure, just to encapsulate the Rose Project, we really do 3 things, right? We try to work hard to enhance Jewish life on campus. We develop self-sufficient Jewish student leaders, and we engage with the campus and broader Orange County Jewish and non-Jewish communities on issues of importance. We do provide direct financial assistance to programs on campus, such as Hillel, Chabad, AE Pi fraternity, AE Phi sorority, pro-Israel student groups, etc. I think this year we're very proud. We've put a new program fully into place now, which we call JCLI, the Jewish Campus Leadership Initiative. Without overthinking that, what it means is that each year, incoming freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and even some graduate student activity, we make sure that there's a number of students who are following a rubric of education and learning and leadership development so that we don't find ourselves the way we did a decade ago or 6 or 7 years ago with a vacuum of leadership among the Jewish students. The students, to be part of this program, put in a lot of work, a lot of dedication. boy, they had to get into a pretty darn good university to start with, right? They're amazing people to begin with. They work tirelessly, and I'd like to call on two of these students here to introduce formally our speaker tonight. Shelby Jerichols is a senior at UCI, where she's president of Hillel, and Aaron Daniel is president of AEPI Fraternity at UCI and is in his second year of JCLI. Shelby and Aaron, please come on up and take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Shalom community members, students, and alumni. My name is Shelby Jerichols, and I am a fourth-year student at UC Irvine, majoring in history. I currently serve as president of Hillel, the Foundation for Jewish Student Life, and Alpha Epsilon Phi, the Jewish sorority on campus.
Shalom. My name is Aaron Daniel, and I'm a third-year student at UC Irvine, majoring in computer science and engineering. I'm the current president of Alpha Epsilon Pi, the Jewish fraternity.
It is both an honor and a privilege tonight that we get to introduce and welcome the new Chancellor of the University of California, Irvine, Howard Gillman, to the Orange County community. Dr. Howard Gillman became UC Irvine's sixth Chancellor on September 18, 2014. He had previously served as Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor since June 2013 and Interim Chancellor since July 1, 2014. An award-winning scholar and teacher, he has academic appointments in the departments of political science, history, law, and criminology. Among his books are The Votes That Counted, How the Court Decided the 2000 Presidential Election, and American Constitutionalism. He has also co-edited 2 other volumes and authored more than 40 articles and book chapters. He has received many awards for his scholarship and for teaching excellence and dedication to students.
Prior to his appointment as Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor at UC Irvine, Dr. Gillman was a professor of political science, history, and law at the University of Southern California. From 2007 to 2012, he served as Dean of the USC Dornsiff College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences. A native of Southern California, Dr. Gillman grew up in North Hollywood and was a first-generation college student. He earned bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in computer science at UCLA. His wife, Ellen, earned a bachelor's degree at UC San Diego and a master's and doctorate in psychology at UCLA. They have 2 children. I want to personally thank Chancellor Gillman for taking time to meet with student leaders during his first few months serving at UCI. I really believe that he is going to make UCI an even better place for students, including those from our Jewish community. I would like to thank the Rose Project of the Jewish Federation and Family Services, Hillel at UC Irvine, AEPI, AEPhi, Anteaters for Israel, and Chabad at UCI for their support in tonight's event. Also, a huge thank you to University Synagogue and their staff for allowing us to use this space tonight. It is now my great honor to welcome Chancellor Howard Gillman to the stage.
Wow, that's a big windup. Here's the pitch. So thank you, Jeff. Thanks especially to Aaron and Shelby for that wonderful and generous introduction. Shelby sometimes knows that when people see her name spelled, her last name spelled, Jirikils, that they don't know how to pronounce it, and it rhymes with miracles, miracles, and which is a very poetic and inspirational sentiment, I think. My last name doesn't rhyme with anything. Maybe if you're looking for a synonym of pharmacist, you can say pillman. The debt collector can be billman, but one way or the other, not nearly as poetic and inspirational. It is great to be back at University Synagogue. Rabbi Rochlis invited my wife, Ellen, and I to a wonderful Shabbat dinner and service earlier in the year. As you heard, it was an absolutely terrific evening with Arnie and Rudy leading just the most beautiful service as so many of you have experienced. And so it's great to be back. And I'm very grateful to all of you for taking the time tonight to be here. If we haven't met before, I hope that we have a chance, maybe during the reception, I have a chance to make your acquaintance in a more personal way. More generally, I'm grateful for the chance to introduce myself to you. And I'm going to take a few minutes, maybe about 15 minutes, to say a few things about the campus. I'm going to say a few nice things about the campus. I'm feeling good about the campus. But I also know that you're here for a forum, and there are things that you may want to ask about. I know there are some things you may want to ask about that I'm not going to talk about in the general remarks, but it's not because I don't want to talk about it. It's just because I assume if you're interested in the decision that the Regents made last year, that you might ask me about it anyway. Happy to talk about that, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I also want to say that I see many familiar faces of people who have been so kind and generous to Ellen and I since we arrived behind the orange curtain in June 2013. And I feel the need to mention so many of you by name. I do want to get to the remarks and the conversation, and so I hope you understand that we're very grateful for all of your support, and please accept my very sincere thanks. I also want to especially thank all of you who have worked to provide a nurturing and supportive mentoring environment for Jewish students at UCI. You know, I'm not sure there ever was a time when we expected college students just to sink or swim on their own, but these days we see the benefits of an extended support structure for our students. Not just their family or their extended family, but especially efforts arising out of the community. You might say, we understand that it takes a village. And that's true not only of the work that you're doing, but so many other people in general are doing on behalf of our students, which is so vital. Many of our students benefit from these extra efforts. They find their identity, they find their strength in the community. Both the university and the community more generally help orient them to this fabulous privilege and experience of being educated at a world-class university. And I've seen firsthand, not just in the work that you've done, but at many special convocations, at many special welcoming events, the real impact these efforts have for our students. And I'll say that campus-wide, these efforts are especially important for our first-generation college students and other students who are coming to this remarkable experience without a privileged background. I think it's not quite appreciated enough how much UCI and UC campuses in general contribute to creating a meaningful opportunity society for Californians, meaningfully contribute to social mobility. 58% of our students are first-generation college students, as I was. About 40% are Pell eligible, meaning that they come from low-income families. And about a third come from underrepresented groups. You could look at the entire Ivy League and the number of, for example, low-income students that the entire Ivy League tries to train are fewer in number than any one of the UC campuses. Combined, all the UC campuses enroll about 77,000 low-income students compared to the entire Ivy League, a little over 9,500. And our graduation rates for these students are the highest in the nation. It is one of the things I'm most proud of in terms of the public mission. It's not enough when you create great institutions for privilege to reproduce privilege. This work is almost not worth doing unless the great promise of America, a true opportunity society where every young person with talent has a chance to thrive in a supportive environment, is fully realized. And there's no institution in the United States that does a better job making good on that promise than the University of California. But we need as much help as we can get. And so the job of ensuring those support structures for our students is very important. And so that's why I want to especially acknowledge all of you who have helped ensure for our Jewish students that kind of supportive environment through programs such as the Rose Project's Jewish Campus Leadership Initiative. You see some of the fruits of this extraordinary program before you. Support for Hillel, support for Jewish fraternities and sororities, Anteaters for Israel. These kinds of partnerships help make sure that these amazing and talented and ambitious and idealistic young people get the full benefit of a truly world-class education and are on a path to achieve at the highest level of their potential and to make great contributions to human well-being, which is exactly what we want to be true when we act on our hope and act on our commitment to the future by creating public research universities. Now, the last time that I was here on this bema, I made some short remarks to the congregation and used the occasion to mention in passing that while religious faith communities were different than secular universities in many important respects, it was possible to find some overlaps in what we hope will be true when we bring people together not to make widgets, but instead to reflect on fundamentally important questions: the nature of existence, why things are the way they are, our role in the world, what it means to live a good life, how best to engage a world that needs our efforts to improve human existence. On the University Synagogue website, under the tab, Take a Class, and let me encourage you to go to the website and push that tab, Take a Class, it says, quote, that Jewish learning is a journey of joyous discovery that enriches our lives. I would add that this has been my experience also with the institutions that I've dedicated my professional life to. These worlds of inquiry and discovery, these worlds of skepticism and curiosity that are great institutions of higher education. When I was a dean at that other university that I worked at for a long time, the name of which I can't quite bring to mind right now, I had an installation speech, and I had to say what I thought was true about leading the largest academic unit at that university. And so I entitled my installation speech, "The Wonder of It All." I said that when we in higher education ask, how do you cultivate and enrich the human mind and spirit? The answer for institutions of higher education and other institutions is we wonder. We wonder about ourselves and our world. We wonder at ourselves and our world. The word wonder for me captured the nagging curiosity that drives us forward. I wonder why that is how it is. It captures the healthy and necessary skepticism that prevents us from taking knowledge claims for granted. I wonder if that's really true. It captures the mystery and sense of awe that we experience in a community in which we are surrounded every day by new ideas, perspectives, and discoveries. I quoted Neil Armstrong's comment that mystery creates wonder, and wonder is the basis of man's desire to understand. And I quoted Abraham Joshua Heschel, who taught, quote, that wonder rather than doubt is the root of knowledge. It is a genuine privilege and a humbling thing to be asked to lead one of the world's great research universities. My parents never had the opportunity to attend college, but they created a home for me that allowed me to find my way to the satisfactions of literature, philosophy, science, art. Now, I won't try to convince you that I spend most of the hours of my days with a face locked in an expression of wonder and awe. There are more routine things that we work on as well, but it is the case, regularly enough, that I'm genuinely filled with wonder and awe at the work and aspirations of our literally world-class faculty and students. Imagine the privilege of every day being part of a community where, for example, a member of our community, in this case Professor Leslie Thompson, is given $8 million by the National Institutes of Health to lead a national effort to create a database of brain cell activity in motor neuron disorders such as ALS, and which as a result will lead to the development of new treatments for those devastating diseases. Or imagine coming to work and one of your colleagues, you find out they've created a Center for Chemistry at the Space-Time Limit. That sounds cool. It goes by the acronym CASTLE, Chemistry at the Space-Time Limit. And they've received $20 million from the federal government to observe chemical processes at the atomic level in real time, that is to say, recording movies of chemical processes. Or where brilliant and brave women and men, doctors and nurses, are prepared to serve this community by being the people we will rely on in the unlikely event that Orange County has an Ebola patient. Or where talented actors and artists put on what I think is the most exciting outdoor Shakespeare festival this region has seen in a long time in our New Swan Theater. Or where a colleague creates a low-cost, disposable breath analysis device that detects quickly lung infections, letting people with cystic fibrosis or other inflammatory respiratory conditions seek immediate treatment and thus prevent life-shortening permanent damage to that already vulnerable airway. Or where cancer patients receive the most hope, or where new evidence of dark matter at the center of the Milky Way's core is discovered, or where a talented 19-year-old learns something she never knew and discovers her real passions and her life's work. Let me tell you, it's a pretty inspirational place. And I'm not even scratching the surface. You see, I always struggle when I have an opportunity to provide examples of the magic and importance of the work that is done at UCI. I struggle because, on the one hand, we need examples of specific things to have a clear sense of what really happens day in and day out on the campus. But on the other hand, the individual examples obscure the sheer sense of scale, because I'm not talking about being in a community where a dozen members are doing exceptional things, or even scores of people, or even hundreds of people. Instead, these examples reflect and give a little window into the work of thousands and thousands of undergraduates, graduate students, professional students, faculty associated with schools and programs that span the spectrum of inquiry, creative expression, and professional practice. This work is amazing and inspirational when it is done at a small liberal arts college by a few hundred dedicated people. It's amazing when it's done at a community college with a more limited but vitally important mission. More amazing still when it's a small or medium-sized university that has a broader mission. But consider how much more activity is represented at a $2.4 billion comprehensive research university with an impact on the local economy of over $4.3 billion, almost 30,000 students, thousands of faculty, 22,000 employees, all of whom are drawn to the mission of education, discovery, and service, allowing the brightest young people to reach their full potential, creating the next generation of researchers and scholars and practitioners, exploring the frontiers of knowledge, igniting innovation, understanding and resolving the most serious challenges facing our world. And add to this the sheer scope of the institution. Add to this its commitment to the highest possible standards of excellence for its faculty, students, and staff. UCI is a member of what's known as the Association of American Universities. You may not know that phrase. It goes by the acronym AAU. The AAU represents America's top 60 research universities. These are research-intensive public and private universities, plus 2 Canadian universities. Of the thousands and thousands of colleges and universities that you hear about every single year, This country has only 60 institutions, the top of the top, that are invited to join the AAU based on the high quality of programs of academic research and scholarship and education. AAU institutions account for more than half of all U.S. doctoral degrees. 60 institutions in the United States generate half of all doctoral degrees, meaning we train the leaders who have an impact throughout higher education. Most members of the national academies, most Nobel Prize winners, of course, come from AAU research universities. UCI is still proud to have been the youngest institution ever invited to join the AAU back in 1995, when we were just about 30 years old, but already had more than our fair share of Nobel Prize winners, National Academy members, and the like. And I say this not for the glory of it, although, you know, it's good to be proud of the home team doing great work, but because it puts into perspective really the last point I want to touch on before we talk. And it has to do with the impact that this extraordinary campus has on the well-being and development of our region. On the day the UC Regents made my appointment official, I said to them that UCI is a vitally important anchoring institution for Orange County, perhaps the most important anchoring institution, and that in my view, the future of Orange County is inextricably tied to the ongoing development of UCI. What I had in mind was the simple, but I think powerful point that those regions in the United States that are lucky enough to have AAU research universities in their midst, and many, many states have no such thing, those regions are magnets. They're magnets of talent. They're temples of human development. They are boulevards of social mobility. I'm trying to find as many metaphors as I can find. They're engines of economic growth. They're catalysts of innovation. They're mobilizers of the best possible interventions in the well-being of the community. This is not an issue relating, there is not an issue, I think, relating to the well-being and future development of this region, where deeper, more productive, more impactful relations with the talent and commitment and energy that is the UCI community will not make our efforts better. We've already announced initiatives in tech transfer and commercialization that, in my opinion, will allow UCI to play a role that no other single institution in Orange County can play, really to be a catalyst for ongoing economic development, tech transfer, and all of the attractions associated with that mission. We're working to further enhance already strong efforts in K through 12 and other aspects of the education ecosystem in Orange County, especially for underserved districts. In arts and culture, we have already announced an initiative that not only pushes the experience of art and encounters with creative expression into every corner of the campus, but which partners the campus with the leading arts and culture institutions of Orange County in the hope that we can do our fair share to continue to make progress on that issue. We know that Orange County is a center of best practices and innovations in sustainability, and, well, to a large part that's because UCI has worked so well with other community partners such as the Irvine Ranch Water District, Edison, and others, to become, among other things, the #1 greenest college or university in the country, according to Sierra Magazine. Well, we can give a round of applause for that. There's a lot of #1. All right. It's an important mission, I think. Our contributions to the region's wellness and health are too numerous to enumerate, but include local clinics, the training of physicians dedicated to serving underserved areas, and of course, providing the best advanced care available if you need it. So I'm going to just refer and finish with 2 recent examples to give you a taste of what it looks like to mobilize the talent, the energy, the size, and the public spiritedness of UCI on behalf of our region. 2 brief examples. A few weeks ago, we announced that our new interdisciplinary Center on Family Violence will be working with community partners throughout Orange County to improve family violence prevention and intervention. This new center brings together expertise in the biological and physical sciences, in engineering, in information and computer science, in art, law, medicine, and health sciences, social sciences, the School of Social Ecology, with the goal of being a premier site for research, education, clinical care, and community collaborations. It is only the majesty of people across the campus believing the issue of family violence in our region is important that brought these faculty together. And I believe they're going to have a tremendous impact in this region, and in so doing have a tremendous impact on this vitally important issue around the country. And then just last week we announced the creation of a new project called UCI Equitable Science Curriculum for Integrating Arts and Public Education. Now, why would you call that? Because if you figure out what the acronym is ESCAPE, and you're always trying to create a program title that creates a good acronym. With $6.4 million from the National Science Foundation, we are going to explore how creative movement and visual arts may help children, especially non-native speakers, better master scientific concepts through an educational technique known as embodied cognition. We lead this effort in partnership with the Orange County Department of Education, teaching artists from the Segerstrom Center of the Arts, and we're going to support teachers in Anaheim City, Capistrano Unified, Irving Unified, Ocean View, Placentia Yorba, Linda Unified, Tustin Unified, and Westminster. There's so much more I want to tell you about, so many more examples, but I know there are also things you want to talk about that I haven't mentioned. And so let me say instead that I hope you'll take the time to learn a little more about what's going on the campus. I know you'll be as proud and inspired by the everyday work the men and women on this campus as I am. And as we identify those areas where we have shared interests and values, specific to the Jewish community, but maybe more generally, our concern about the region more generally, its development, its health, its thriving, I hope that we will be able to reach out to each other, to find opportunities to work together so that we can create a better world for us and a brighter tomorrow for our children, which is the only reason why you would create a great research university. So thanks for the time for me to brag a little bit on our community. I know there's other things for us to talk about, and I'm very much looking forward to the conversation, so thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to have an open mic forum. We have floor mics, and so start thinking of your questions for Chancellor Gillman. I can tell you that I hope you're having the reaction that I've had when I first started getting involved with UCI as a member of the UCI Chief Executive Roundtable. I mean, here we're living here, and right in our midst is this truly amazing place, and I don't know how many of you interact with it enough to know just how amazing it is. And so, do we have any first questions out there?
Don't be shy.
While you're thinking of your question, I guess I'll kick it off. The first one I already quashed. I heard that this was going to be the first In-N-Out to add a pastrami burger to the menu, but I tried to follow that up. It's not true. You've got, I guess I'll ask a serious question.
Yeah.
As you started thinking about coming into this community, and you, I'm sure, knew something about the history of what was happening here, did you have, when you think a little bit about your background and your Jewishness, did you think a little bit about what sort of overall gestalt feeling you might want to bring to this place, given the incredible responsibility to run a world-class university has been placed on your shoulder, and the, I guess, familial or overall responsibility that we all have in kindred spirit?
Yeah.
And
so, like the rest of the world, I followed with interest when all heck was breaking loose those years ago. And I wanted to make sure when I joined the community that I had an understanding of what had been happening since then. bad news travels around the world while good news is still putting its souche on, right? Whatever Mark Twain said, it takes a long time to find out. So we had many conversations with many of you in the course of the last year, just so that I can get my bearings. How were people feeling about it? How did this community respond? How do our students feel? The issue of creating an environment where you can thrive in an academic setting, it's a vitally important issue. All of our students, when you invite them into this world, need to be able, even with the cacophony of disagreement, which you need to be able to feel as though they can engage questions, learn from exchange. My overall feeling about the world right now is that we've gotten pretty good at yelling at each other. And sometimes, we have strong views. And you need an opportunity to express those views. And you need an opportunity to protest. You have to make your mark, state your piece. But, the cable news networks have gotten very good at creating an outrage machine. We see its effects throughout the society. We see its effects in Washington. And it's exhausting. And sometimes I think that that's not just true of the culture in the United States. Sometimes I think that the whole world is turning into a place where we don't want to hang out with people unless they're exactly locked into what we think. So the eastern Ukraine now thinks it's, parts of it, a little intolerable to be with the rest of Ukraine because, goodness gracious, that we should get together even if we come from different nationalist ethnic backgrounds. And so I'm a constitutional scholar, and one of the things that I admire about the field is that the challenge of creating a community that is willing to live with each other around certain touchstone values is simultaneously one of the most miraculous ideas that has entered into the story of humankind and amongst the most fragile. They're always willing to sort of spin out of control. And I used to think that the solution to that problem was just to get everyone to have the same interpretation of the Constitution that I had. So as long as if I just sort of beat everyone over the head with my view of it, then we'd all be fine. But increasingly, when you study the politics and the history of the US Constitution, you realize has never been the case. And actually, the more important challenge facing any democracy, any community that believes in diversity and engagement, is to try to model how people who don't agree choose to live with each other and view that as a strength rather than a weakness. And there are many pockets in this world where I think it's hard to see how you would make progress. But one of the other contributions that a great academic community can make is to try to model that kind of commitment. So to enter into this space should be to agree that there is value in the world to a place that privileges conversation, diversity, evidence-based reasoning, that doesn't expect everyone to converge, but keeps inquiry going. And there are certain norms associated with how an academic community does things. And so I wanted to know, over the last few years, has there been progress in that direction? And there are issues in general that you need to keep working on. But I felt reassured in the last year that because of tremendous work that many of you have done, that we're feeling better. We feel it is a place where everyone has a chance to state a point of view. No one immune from criticism, right? Still maintaining a commitment to a robust exchange of ideas. We are, after all, bound by the US Constitution as well. but to believe, in addition merely to the freedom to express yourself, that there is value to engagement, to reaching across. Because really, if you can't accomplish that at a North American research university in the 21st century, it's hard to see how the rest of the world can even get close. And so my hope and expectation is that we create that space. It's not always going to be successful. We're going to take a couple of steps forward, a couple steps back. People are going to think that some gesture is going to be a gesture that needs to be decried. Others think it's just part of what it means to put yourself in a situation where people have strong points of view. The impossible decision of campus leadership is to always figure out how to call it as you see it, with as much principled commitment to the value of free speech on the one hand and the belief in the necessity of a culture of inquiry on the other. And, but I feel that on this issue, our students are feeling confident. They're given the tools, even when things get a little tough, to feel strong. And that's not just the students who have benefited from this program, but students in general, and whatever we can do to create a space in the world where people can reach across, reflect, and discuss is of as important a service to the world as anything the engineers and the doctors are going to be doing.
Looks like we have two questions. I believe she was waiting first. So.
I don't really have a question. I want to tell you a little story.
Sure.
This university, it amazes me what's happened to it. My father was the original contractor here. He did all the original underground work, which I'm sure is probably crumbling by now, and the roads and the streets and the bridges. And they had a dedication for that, or groundbreaking. It was totally, completely empty fields. Nothing but empty fields all through Irvine and a few hills. And they had the groundbreaking. It was just after John Kennedy was assassinated. And I was there at the groundbreaking. It was a very small select group. And the speaker was Lyndon Johnson, who had just become president. And we all were marveling at, where's the guards? Where's the guards? Isn't somebody going to shoot him? We were so nervous about it. And they brought the helicopter right down. I was that close to it. And piles and piles of people were coming out of it. And it was a really great experience. And now look at what's happened. Then, a number of years later, Gerald Ford was president. He was also there speaking. But now he was speaking inside the, I guess it was a basketball stadium. So this university has had a number of presidents to come speak. And I was not a big fan. Exactly. I was going to write a red letter and tell them that too. Because when Gerald Ford spoke, I wasn't a big fan of his, and I really enjoyed him. He was very interesting and had a very kind person. So I just thought it was kind of interesting to tell that.
And just the one quick thing that I would say is that, so we had a chance with President Obama's presence to reflect a lot on that history. We're actually approaching our 50th anniversary, so we are reflecting a lot. There's a video on the website that actually has film of what President Johnson said back on that day. And we actually had to go to the Johnson Library because we had the film, but we didn't have the audio. And so we needed to go to the Johnson Library to get the audio and then squish it all together.
Someone in my family has film and audio.
Well, so you should reach out because we're looking for all of that. And what was especially moving about the story of Lyndon Johnson and then President Obama is that Johnson spoke on the campus a day after the Senate passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And had already laid out a vision for the transformation of healthcare, the transformation of civil rights, the transformation of the Great Society. And to have President Obama come on the 50th anniversary when you thought about what the country was going through 50 years ago was tremendously moving. And the final thing I'd say about it is, I do think that one of the great gestures that a free people makes in the direction of hope is creating these kinds of institutions. Why else create a place of research and education committed to training fabulous young people? It is really a commitment to the future. And when they built this campus 50 years ago, they wanted to create one of the great centers of learning in the United States. And we still have a way to go. We are a tremendously talented campus, but we still have great ambitions. And there's more for us to do, not, again, for the glory of doing more, but because the more impactful our research, the more successful we are in getting great outcomes for our students, the more that our professional and PhD students go into the world and make contributions at the highest level, the faster the world is going to be a better place. And so we are thinking now, it's only been less than 100 days, about exactly how, in the phrase that we are using to keep our bearings, how do we accelerate our ascendancy among globally preeminent institutions? People who know us think we're great, not enough people quite know us, but that's okay. It means there's a lot of headroom for us to improve. And boy, we can use all of your partnerships and good ideas about how not only we can achieve that goal, but also better serve Orange County, which is fundamentally part of our public mission. So thanks for referring to that.
That's a perfect segue to the question I have for you, Chancellor Gillman. Good evening.
Good evening.
Seth Siegel is my name. I am both an active leader, volunteer leader of the Jewish Federation of Family Services. I'm the current vice chair of the Bureau of Jewish Education here in Orange County and of Hillel here in Orange County. And just welcome to the block.
Thank you.
I say that your comments are the perfect segue to my question because I know we've made great progress in addressing anti-Semitism here in Orange County, specifically at UCI. I'm wondering if you can be specific, I know it's early days for you, about what some of your plans might be to continue that progress and continue to address both anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment here, both in Orange County and at UCI.
So thank you for the question. So the one thing that I want to do is when I have an opportunity to speak to people who are helping address that issue, to create that infrastructure that's a strong infrastructure, not just on behalf of Jewish students who are advocating on behalf of their values, but the student body in general, I want to say thank you because it is a partnership. We work very hard, right? We create counseling centers, we create advisors, we try to create as much space and create the right culture. But any great thing that you're going to accomplish in this space is going to be accomplished through partnerships. And so, to continue to encourage, I think a lot of the progress that have been made by the Rose Project is very important. We have an ongoing effort with students who are most energized around debates on this issue, if you allow me to be a little euphemistic about it, to bring those students into relationship with one another. So leadership of Hillel with representatives from the Muslim Student Union. Because if we just let everyone stay in their corner and don't try to model conversations, then it strikes me that it's likely for people not to develop the frame of mind, the orientation, and the temperament that will lead to the most constructive engagement. I circulated a memo early in my chancellorship that talked about both free speech and civility on the campus. And by free speech, it has to be understood, I'm a constitutional scholar, I am a classic small L liberal when it comes to freedom of speech. Part of freedom of speech means you're going to encounter ideas that you disagree with, and even that in some cases you find offensive. And that's part of the measure of a free society, I believe in that. But I did try to lay out why, because you have the freedom to speak, doesn't mean that that's the kind of culture that great institutions of inquiry can create. Because fundamentally, the social value that we bring to these debates is to be different than the dynamic that you're going to see in other spaces. So proactively working with student leadership and student groups, we're modeling engagement on specific issues. We have specific projects that do that. We have fora that we put together, including about 2 weeks ago, where Erwin Chemerinsky agreed to do a workshop for our student leaders on what free speech is and free speech isn't. And the first thing that he said at the beginning of the fora was to reference what happened with during the Michael Oren incident, and to say, some of you might think that because you're standing up and screaming, that you're using your speaking capability and that's free speech, but that's a misunderstanding of what free speech is. Free speech is not shouting people down. And just to be proactive so that before we're having a specific argument, we're deepening the students' understanding of what the expectations are to be a part of the community. So working with partnerships, trying to be proactive. I don't know whether you have examples of things that you think the campus have done that you think is valuable, whether you've had those experiences given your leadership position. I think the students can talk a little bit about some of the work that we've tried to do. But creating the right culture, establishing the right support structures are a start, and maintaining vigilance on what it means for people to have the privilege of being part of a great academic community and what's distinctive about that kind of community. So that's among the things that we're starting to think about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the question. Yeah.
Go over to this mic.
Got it.
Hi, Chancellor Gillman. Being in a Jewish setting, I wanted to ask a different kind of student question, which is, when you went to UCLA and I went, it was 25% Jewish. USC not so much. And today USC has tons of Jewish kids. And in Orange County in LA, we don't hear parents wanting to send their kids to UC schools because there aren't enough Jewish kids. And I'm wondering, are we doing something? Is UC not, quote, quote, marketing Jewish kids? Is it really more for immigrant kids or first generation kids? Or are we too lazy in getting our kids to study harder to be able to get into the schools? I mean,
There's no doubt, they're competitive schools. There's no doubt about it. I was at USC for a long time. Oh, I guess I mentioned the name of that other institution I've been part of. A great institution. And, had a history that was a complicated history, moved toward being in a especially good position on some of these issues. You'll have to, since I'm relatively new to the system, and I was a kid who was drawn to the system. I mean, my parents didn't have any money, and every opportunity I ever had in life was made possible because the University of California was created by the people of California. And so I think what you want when you have talented young people and you have your kid and you're trying to answer the question, where should I send my kid? Right? Fundamentally, the answer is, you got to send them to one of the great institutions. And so part of my pitch is, there is no better educational experience that you're going to get than one of these tremendous University of California campuses. Hard to get in, still a great deal. But you need to make sure that everyone feels as though if they are there, they can thrive. And we have issues with different groups of students. With Prop 209 passing, there was a dramatic decline in the number of African American students. And special efforts have to be made to make sure that those students don't feel completely isolated, just as you want to make sure, if there are small numbers or relatively smaller numbers of Jewish students, that we need to make sure they're surrounded and supported in a proper way so that they are confident they can thrive and take full advantage of the opportunity. So I'm here to say, from my point of view, the door is open. We want the best and the brightest. You're going to have a great experience. So far, so good, yeah. Fabulous professors, great community, not far from the beach. Orange County, one of the most vibrant places that you could go. And a place that's looking to the future. And I know it's a little bit of chancellor talk. I'm a bit of a romantic, though. I mean, I wouldn't have joined this community if I didn't feel fundamentally like it's one of the most thrilling places that you could be. And that sometimes we look and are on guard against things that aren't exactly right. And you can miss out on the broader perspective. And the inspiration that we all take, I think, every day from the great work and support of our faculty and students, I think, is still there to be had. And so let's do what we can to make sure that the very best in Orange County and elsewhere know that increasingly UCI is going to be a first-choice student for the most promising people who want to have the best education. And so that's part of what my commitment is to make that happen. So thanks. I have to start talking and giving shorter answers because I want to get through a lot of the additional questions, and I'll try to restrain myself a little bit.
The university regents just okayed an increase in tuition yet again. When my 3 children went through UC, different campuses, they were able to pay their tuition. We paid room and board. They paid their tuition just from summer jobs.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that's totally impossible. And at the other end of getting their bachelor's degree, there are no jobs really that they can get. What do you do about that problem?
What are you going to, right. On the issue, by the way, so I'm going to do tuition in a second. On the issue of what the outcomes are, you know, I don't want to always refer to rankings that are kind of good rankings that favor us, but Money Magazine did a very interesting analysis of what the outcomes of different students from different institutions are relative to their demographic and peer group. So if you really looked at, for example, the demographics of the student body at one institution as opposed to another, which ones were coming out of those institutions with the higher paying jobs, the better outcomes, less debt, and so on. And UC Irvine was number 2 in the country on that measure. And so you're right, we're coming out of a tough economy. It maybe wasn't the way that it was back in the days when there wasn't so much global competition for workforce, but the outcomes are still very strong outcomes. On the issue of what the regents did, my hope and expectation is that there will not be a tuition increase. What the regents did was say that if the state would give us a bit more than what the governor wants to do in his budget plan, then we don't need to do a tuition increase. But fundamentally, tuition is a function of, at public research universities, tuition is a function of the presence or absence of state support. You can pull this little lever and that little lever, but fundamentally, the reason why tuition's higher than it is now is that the overall budget that the state provides the university is dramatically lower. The state's budget contribution to our income as a campus is about 8%. And so when the state brings down its commitment, it's going to either fundamentally transform the institution in the sense that you create a different kind of institution, which is what the governor wants. The governor wants us to go to create an online university, 2- and 3-year degrees rather than 4-year degrees, research faculty not doing research but instead teaching. And that's part of what he said at the Regents meeting. And some of us believe in the greatness of the institution and are trying to protect it, but trying to encourage the state to do a little bit more. And so my hope and expectation is that the legislature is willing to give the University of California a little bit more. Some of you thought we got a lot when we all worked together to pass Prop 30 if you supported it. A lot of our students went out there to support Prop 30. And so some people are surprised to learn that the University of California gets less than 5% of Prop 30 money. And that's because the governor fundamentally doesn't believe in the vision of the University of California. Last spring, the state legislature, with billions of dollars of surplus money, thought that an additional $100 million or $15 million, $50 million for the university was a step in the direction of a reinvestment. And we had majorities in the state legislature, but the governor forced the leadership of the Democratic caucus to pull back. And when that happened, no one thought, well, if the governor did that, it's going to have this bad effect on students, or if the governor did that, there would be bad consequences. It was kind of a free pass for him to continue to insist on his vision for the future of the system. And I think the Los Angeles Times editorial board was right a couple of weeks ago when they said that what's at stake here is the soul of the University of California. Whether you all believe that there is something great about the quality of these public research universities in California, which is unmatched in the world, and I think one of the great central institutions of the state, making the state that it is in a positive way. And so I'm hoping now that when I believe the state legislature decides to give us a little bit of extra money, that the governor then understands that if he vetoes that has a very specific consequence for our students. The final thing I'll say is this. The increases that we saw a number of years ago for the University of California were on the order of 40%, in a year or two. And those are shocking numbers. What we're talking about, and I prefer this not happen, but what we're talking about is a $600 increase, and only families making $175,000 or more would pay that entire $600. Any family making $80,000 or less pays zero of that increase. Families making up to $150,000 only pay a smaller portion of that increase. Now, I don't want to diminish the importance of $600, and maybe $175,000 doesn't go as far as it used to. I get that. So I prefer for the state to commit to a reinvestment. Right now, we're getting $460 million less from the state than we did in 2007. And so $100 million prevents that from happening. But if it does happen, I don't think it's going to interfere with affordability and with the social mobility mission, but it certainly places, I think, an additional unfair burden on families, given what I think would be a more proper role for the state. It's going to take months and months for us to see how this unfolds. And my hope is in the end, the state begins to walk a little bit more in the direction of the kind of partnership that I had with the state when I was a student in the 1970s and that many of you have had in your families back in the day. I think the state would be in a much better position to position itself in the future if that was the case. So thanks. Okay.
I'm Ralph Stern, and first I'd like to say I'm sure I, along with most people in this room this evening, feel very fortunate that you're the Chancellor of UCI.
Thanks, Ralph. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
My question concerns Middle Eastern studies programs at universities around the country.
Yeah.
And their funding. Some of these programs are being funded in significant ways by Arab money with strings attached. And I don't know whether any of these countries have approached UCI or not, but my question is, assuming they did and offered significant sums with the strings attached, what position would UCI take?
So the most important decision that any academic leader can make if you're trying to build partnerships with people is to figure out, are there correct strings attached or are there not correct strings attached? A number of us who have been doing fundraising for a long time have been in situations where a funder wants to say, we'll do this, but X, Y, or Z should happen. And X, Y, or Z doesn't have to be anything all of that terrible and dramatic, but it could be, for example, before you hire the director of the thing, we want to make sure that you only hire the people that we think are okay. So the basic academic freedom of the institution, right, gets undermined. And in every case, you need to have the ability to say that the academic mission of the institution is for the faculty and the administration to decide, that if you have a vision of what you want to help us accomplish, it might be further supporting our fabulous Jewish Studies program, right? In a way where you want to provide additional opportunities for our students or create dollars where students can do special research or go to parts of the world where you would want to encourage them to go in a way that's managed by the academic leadership of the institution, then those are always exciting conversations to have. And there are legitimate strings that can be attached. You could say, for example, I'm going to give you a chair in Jewish Studies. I want to make sure that that person also has some experience and understanding as a scholar in Holocaust studies. And that's what's especially important to me. And so in the description of who you're trying to recruit as the chair, they want not only someone who is going to be a chair in Jewish studies, but have some expertise and scholarly reputation in Holocaust studies. That's a perfectly legitimate conversation to have with a donor. But for someone to say, and before you hire someone, I've got a board that needs to approve it, or that's over the line. One of the things that I'm most proud of at the University of California is how seriously the faculty and the administration take the fundamental academic integrity of the operation and want to build partnerships, but not in a way that's going to undermine the fundamental academic integrity. And so those are the principles that you always have to be mindful of. And the one thing that an institution can lose just like that is its reputation for integrity as a fair-minded institution engaging in scholarship, being driven by the professional judgment of outstanding faculty working with students. And the one thing that you can tell from the University of California, you know, when you have a big, big place and there's thousands of people, you can find individual faculty and say, well, we think that person's a knucklehead, you know, that person's a knucklehead. That's kind of what freedom looks like, right? Everyone's not exactly going to do what you think, but they have the freedom to do it. And the University of California as an institution is rock solid on issues, I think, of academic integrity like that, which is why those conversations will always unfold, in my judgment, in a very productive way and not put at risk values that we think would undermine the academic enterprise.
I love your answer. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I get lucky every once in a while. Thanks.
Hi, so my name's Rachel Weiner, and I'm a Jewish student at UC Irvine. And I was wondering if you have any goals for the Jewish community at UCI specifically, and if so, what are specific steps UCI is taking to fulfill those goals?
So I have general goals for all of our students and faculty of the sort that I mentioned before, that they want to be in a position where every person can thrive, where they're put in relationship to others in a way that's productive, that's consistent with an academic mission, and so on. I also have another goal that for anything that we do as an institution, we are looking for partners to make us even greater at that thing. Now, we got lots and lots of programs, many deans, many schools, many departments, many degrees. But for example, if we are going to have a program, a fabulous academic program in Jewish studies, then one of the things that I know is true of every institution of higher education that does things better and better, becomes more globally preeminent, does even better scholarship, makes even better contributions to the world, is that those developments require partnerships between the campus and other people that want to see the campus succeed. And in some cases, what people want is that you want us to do an even better job on issues relating to sustainability. In other cases, you want to make sure that our Comprehensive Cancer Center is the very best in the world in certain areas. But it could also be the case that you believe so much in the mission of making sure that at the highest quality level, if you're going to teach Jewish studies, you have the best professors, you're attracting the best students, they create programs that create professors that go to other places. Those things the campus can do to a certain extent, but truly great developments almost always happen because we figure out how to partner with one another to make it even better. So, you know, part of it is your name here. You know, if you want the Frieda Smith program in Jewish studies and there's a new endowment and the endowment is used to attract new professors and the like, that can be better, just like anything that we do. And the great thing about a research university is there's not a thing that you don't care about. Sorry, double negative. There's not a thing you care about where if you wanted to figure out a way to have a better impact in the world, that there wouldn't be a partner at this campus. It could be maybe you care about the future of watercolor curation. It may be that you care about drama. It may be you care about molecular science and engineering. Maybe that you care about Jewish studies. And this campus is open to every conversation where we do things even better, where we become a beacon and move the light forward. You know, the motto of the University of California, another thing that we have in common maybe with this kind of setting, Fiat Lux. I understand in the Hebrew Bible it doesn't start by saying Fiat Lux, but the motto is let there be light. Not a more moving motto in higher education, in my opinion. And so wherever we want to shine the light and fight against the darkness, we're prepared to go. And my hope is that you all engage with us in a way that help us do great things with respect to Jewish studies, in the same way that I hope if you have other interests, there are other partnerships that we can also forge. So thanks for the question.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Follow-up. But specifically about the Jewish student community, not the Jewish studies program,
Yeah.
but the community of students that are Jewish at UCI.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had any goals or anything with that group of students, not just the academic programs.
Okay, so the part of what I've done in a short period of time is learned from the folks who are supporting these kinds of programs of those efforts. And since I feel as though they tell me that these efforts are being impactful, that over the last couple of years, lots of students have benefited. We're moving in a good direction. A lot of the guidance I've been hearing about people who've engaged the campus on these issues is that these programs are a good path, a worthy path to continue to build on and support in a way that in part I'm trying to acknowledge and support by being here. We have a lot of people, many of whom are sitting here, who think all the time about what the next step is, in addition to scholarships or leadership training and the like. There are other things that we could do. I think it takes a village to think about ways every single year to be better and better at it. I don't have any new ideas as the brand new guy on what we should be doing next year versus this year that people who have spent hundreds and thousands of hours thinking about up until this point haven't already suggested. But if you keep the conversation ongoing, I know that every single year we're going to think of some new things, but I could use as much help as I can get.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
I just wanted to touch on a question that another gentleman asked a few minutes ago. He was asking, and I guess also saying about how it's interesting how if you go to some other schools, there's a huge population of Jewish students, and if you come to UCI, you don't see that as much. Well, first off, I wanted to give my opinion on it, saying that I think that the biggest thing is that UCI, it's an interesting catch-22, because when I went to Milken Community High School, I'm sure there are people that know what that is, Jewish high school in LA, but I was the only one from my school that came to UCI out of like 175 kids graduating. And I think the biggest issue is that it's a PR thing, Jewish mothers don't want to send their kids to a school that is anti-Semitic and anti-Israel and whatever. And as a Jewish student at UCI, that's blatantly not true. I mean, I'm there. I've never had a problem with anti-Semitism. There's 1 week out of the year where the MSU and SJP really are very prominent. But other than that, you don't feel anything. I wear my I Heart Israel shirt to the gym every other day. Yeah. Never had any problems.
Fine. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's
right.
It's never been an issue. So I guess my question is, what can UCI do to change that image? I mean, in the past, there's been a lot of tarnishing. How can we polish that to get Jewish students to UCI?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think part of what you do is you got to keep relentlessly telling the truth about what's true now. And so your story is an important story. The story of the tremendous work of people in this community is important to highlight. The work that Hillel does, right? The work that Chabad does, very important to highlight. And, it's also the case, one or two conspicuous images in this age can really frame how people orient themselves to the world, right? And so you need one bad event and then people hammering away on that event for a really long time. And you got to dig deep and redouble your efforts. First, to make sure that that's not a fair representation, and then to try to push out. So from my point of view, there's still some lingering efforts out there, I think, to maybe when people want to do fundraising, maybe maybe for sincere reasons, maybe for not sincere reasons, because that was such a flashpoint to kind of remind people about that flashpoint. And I think that people of integrity in the community know that if you're trying to do that, that's not a fair and accurate representation of what's going on here. And my hope is that, maybe we could stop rerunning that reel over and over again and just be fair, because at some point, if people do the right thing, you got to get credit for it, right? And not that you do the right thing just to get credit, but it's nice every once in a while if you dug deep and did the hard work. And so I think getting our stories out is a very powerful thing. And so we'll get you on our news site, and you'll say lots of nice things. We'll reach out. I know that if there are folks in the community in feeder schools who wonder and need to have an additional measure of understanding about the commitment of the institution to supporting all of the students, that we'll reach out, we'll figure out what those right conversations are like. And the last thing I'd say is, you might have participated in a climate survey that we did throughout the entire campus. The Jewish students on the campus, like all of the students on the campus, overwhelmingly say they're not uncomfortable at all on the campus. And so, there are things that happen that draw a little bit of attention. And, I have to have faith in the fundamental rationality in the long run of human beings, right? Or else I'm really in the wrong line of work. And so my job is to be committed to a reality-based community and not one that gets sucked into the craziness of fleeting images. So I don't have the magic wand if there's still a lingering impression, but I know that a lot of the work that people have done even before I got there is going to be a big part of getting us over that hump. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Good answer. Okay. I know this young man's been waiting for a long time, but we're going to have to cut it off after this one last question. But I just did want to make a comment to the last question that the university and Chancellor Gillman has just arrived, right? But the university has invested in putting together Jewish resource guides and has invested in making sure that every opportunity is given to project the right image for Jewish students, including outreach to high schools and so forth in the state. It's the responsibility not of the administration, but of the Jewish community also to help on this topic. And it's the Jewish community in many ways that created some of the messaging that we have to overcome as a community going forward. And I don't want that to be lost on this crowd tonight. It's a very important issue. Young man, yours is the last question of the night, and then the Chancellor will be available at the reception.
I'll try and make it good. Yeah, I guess just on that last remark about the Jewish community and the climate, my parents were actually in that exact scenario. I was accepted to a lot of different schools, West Coast, East Coast, and trying to make a decision. And just as the unfortunate incident with Michael Arndt happened, so I think we sort of did a lot of reaching out, calling up different organizations, going to different things, and having a resource guide, like you said, or reaching out to the community and families of college-going students. I think would be a great thing to do. I guess on the point of my question, again, with fiat lux, let there be light, and as you said, of course, as a chancellor, you are one who needs to, have faith in humanity, needs to have, an optimistic image, and it's a critical concept. But in addition, as you said, making sure we're not veering away from the realities of things. And, I'm an engineering student. Again, I guess like another comment was saying, my dad paid his own way through college. He came from a family of not as much means, working side jobs and stuff. And I've been doing something similar. I've been fortunate. I'm an engineering student. I've been working at companies like Intel, Broadcom every summer during the year, trying to make sure I can pay for my own school as my dad did. And it's getting quite hard. And, I've seen, I see all these great new research labs going up, and I understand the funding from that usually comes from grants, but at the same time, I see classes getting cut, less faculty, classrooms in disrepair, student spaces getting pushed off to research. I mean, what is your commitment? Of course, there's a dual mission, institution and education. You have any ideas about kind of realigning or from a meritocracy point of view, looking in and taking action on those, or
Thank you for that. Absolutely, readjusting. I think that we're not fundamentally out of whack. I mean, I think that fundamentally the institution has a balance, but I do think especially as the state has divested from higher education and the students and your families are bearing the brunt, that it's vitally important that we redouble our efforts to ensure an outstanding student experience and outstanding student success. Right. So one of the things that we've been working with the leadership of the student government over the last couple of weeks as some of these issues have arisen. And one of the things they asked me was, if one way or the other there's going to be some additional revenue, maybe the state's going to step in, can we work with you to make sure that we can talk in a very specific way about how students in particular are going to benefit, other than through the very indirect effects that we've hired more research faculty? right?
Yeah, or
which is not an inconsiderable thing, right? It's a great thing to work with great research faculty, right? But so we are committed, and in the statement that I released to the campus, but also that the Orange County Register published, we used the language that your student leaders gave me, that they wanted to see what kind of concrete promises that we would make. That with more faculty, we're going to see reductions in the sizes of some classes, additional classes to make it easier to finish more quickly, even though I think our 4- and 6-year graduation rates are very good, additional support structures for students. Increasingly, there are students who are putting demands on our student mental health services. We have to make sure that they have easy access so that if issues arise where they want a little bit of help to cope with some stress before exams, that we're in a position to offer that. All of those things are things that we are absolutely committed to. And part of the reason why we think we want a little bit of extra funding is that this campus, before I ever got there, did heroic work cutting in order to keep the ship afloat, but not being in the optimal place that we were at, before this happened. And we think we need to be in a position now to take those next steps, to kind of get back a little bit where we were. And part of my commitment, and when I was appointed by the regents, one of the few points that I made to the regents on the day of my appointment was to say that in addition to being a place where the very best faculty come to do outstanding work, we need to be a place that is absolutely committed to bringing the very best students here, giving them the best experience, and making sure they have the best outcomes. And so as we move forward, we're going to be putting some meat on those bones and specifically talk about how students will be enhanced by creating new innovative learning spaces, by getting a better faculty-student ratio, by making sure that classes are right-sized whenever possible, and so on and so on. So that's absolutely my commitment. I've got kids that are still college-age kids. I went through it myself. I see it every day. And you can forget sometimes, if you believe in the importance of the research mission, that we're not a research institute, that fundamentally this world of inquiry is about engaging you and your generation and having as big an impact on your life as possible, and that's going to be a priority for us moving forward. So one way or the other, we're going to make sure to do justice to that, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. So
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, one last round of applause for Chancellor Gillman. And again, Rabbi Rocklis and Sari, thank you so much for the use of your wonderful facility. We have a reception afterwards. That direction? That direction. Back there. Sorry. And please stick around, and I think Chancellor will be able to stick around for a little bit more time. For those of you who were able to ask your questions, thank you very much. And on behalf of the Rose Project, thanks for coming here tonight. Good night.